Welcome back to Simple Sourdough. My name is Peter, and today I'm going to show you how we make our sourdough pizza, which is a very easy recipe and it's very easy to make at home. We eat this at least once every week, and I have a friend who is a pizza blogger and he's eating pizza up to 7 days a week. This is also his go-to recipe, and I have had a lot of pizza discussions with this guy, especially about the base of the pizza, which is the dough. He prefers to add a bit of stone grounded flour or some whole grain to his pizza dough, but you know, you're always smearing a lot of taste on top of your pizza, which camouflages the real taste of the dough. So he made a different approach, and every time you have eaten the inside of the pizza, there's always the crust left. Some people, they actually leave it on the side without eating it, especially if it's too burnt. But he started making some compliments, so whenever he's serving a pizza at his place, he's always adding some extra sauces, so you can you know, dip the pizza crust in all these sauces when you have eaten the inside. That's a very cool approach. Today we are going to make it very simple. We are going to use just some regular strong white flour, and a person asked me how do we tell if it's a strong flour? For our country, anything above 11 grams of protein is considered strong. I know in warmer places you can get white flour up to at least 16 grams of protein, even higher. So before we start, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's helping our bakery out a lot. So we are working on more exposure. So yeah, thank you guys, and let's get to it. So let's just run through the recipe really fast. We are doing this kind of dough differently than we would normally do if we are making bread, because this dough has a lower hydration. That also means it needs less mixing time. So instead of doing an autolyse, we are just adding everything at once. If we would do an autolyse by just mixing the water and the flour, then the dough would become really strong because of the low hydration. And then we might end up mixing it too much if we are adding the complements after, the sourdough and the salt. So let's begin. The recipe calls for, this is for 2 pizza, and the recipe calls for 400 grams of strong white flour, 80 grams of sourdough, 10 grams of salt, and 240 grams of water. The water is lukewarm, like all the other bread we are making. 240. And then I'm adding the sourdough. I'm always adding all my wet ingredients first, because I don't want all the dry stuff to stick to the bottom of my mixing bowl. 80 grams sourdough, salt, just going to dissolve the sourdough and the salt a little bit, and then I'm adding all my flour. When we are mixing a low hydration dough, we are just going to be way more gentle. The basic rule for when we are making bread, if you're making a very wet dough, then you want to mix at a higher pace. That's just imagine the hook going through a very wet batter. It almost cannot grip it, so that's why you need to mix it a bit faster. Here I'm just mixing at medium speed. And what I'm looking at, I just want the dough to combine all the ingredients and just ball up around the hook. I don't really have to mix it for too long. If we have some very fresh flour and strong flour, then it will just work on its own. It will start creating these strong gluten strings very fast. So the fresher the flour, the easier it is and the less mixing time you need. If you got some extremely fresh flour, then it sometimes can be really hard because it's very active on enzymes. Okay, so this is really it. Everyone can do this, there's no magic to this, and you can see the dough has just balled up. Now I just want to leave it to rest here in my mixing bowl for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to move it to a container, and I will show you how I do that in a bit. Okay, so now our dough has rested for half an hour. So I'm just using my dough card to get all of it. And at this stage, if you had a bigger dough, you could cut it out and just measure it. I'm just dividing it in half. And this is how I ball a pizza dough. I'm just running it like this from my hands. Some people prefer to do like this on the surface, or they use the dough scraper to just ball it up. I think this is way easier like this. So now when we have balled our pizza dough, we want to leave it to rest in room temperature for about 3 hours. And at this stage, after the 3 hours, we could actually use the pizza dough right away. Some people prefer to cold rest it overnight to develop some more taste. This way it's also easier for you to get some nice baking on your crust and those leopard stripes. So now we really have two options. You can just put the dough balls down in a box like this and proof it, or we can make it easier for ourselves when we want to shape the balls later. This could also just be a bowl that you have in your home. I'm just going to spray it a bit with some fat, oil. I could also just drizzle it with some flour. And really, that's it. And I'm going to let this rest now for, I think, 3 days. And then I will make the rest of the video where I'm showing you how to bake the pizza dough. I sometimes just let it rest for 1 day, and that's perfectly fine. That will make an excellent pizza. So this is how it looks like. I'm going to leave it here for 3 hours, and then I will put it to rest in the fridge for, well, up to a week if I want to. The drier the dough, the longer it can last in the fridge. So now 3 days have passed, and as you can see, our dough is full of air. This is our setup. I got some flour here, got my pizza slider, tomato sauce, salt, some cheese, and the oven is set a bit different than when we are baking sourdough bread. So what I got here at the top is a baking steel or pizza steel. I'm running my oven with the fan, and then at the top I have the grill turned on. It looks like this. I just want as much heat from the top and from the baking steel as possible. That will cook the pizza evenly. So here's how we do it. Just going to take my dough out, fold it into the flour here. And I prefer just shaping it directly on the pizza slider. I have just drizzled it with a bit of flour. I'm just stretching the dough a bit. I'm trying not to poke a hole in the middle. And I'm trying to keep a bit of all that air in the side. Usually when you shape this, you will see the gluten trying to find its way back. Some people like to just shape the pizza and just let it relax, and then they can push it out further. But this is perfectly fine. A bit of sauce here, and as soon as you put the sauce, you kind of have to work a bit fast because it's wet and it will go through the bottom of your dough. If it's too wet, this is just a pizza sauce I made, cooked away a lot of the water. putting some cheese, just grating a bit of Parmesan. I have no idea if this is a traditional pizza. Bit of salt, and now just looks like this, sliding it in. And then it should cook for about, well, 3 minutes. If you have a really good oven, then usually it only takes 1.5 minutes. So you have to look closely. Okay, so let's check it out in a bit.
So you can actually see how thin the crust is right here. What a beauty.
We have to act quickly now because the pizza has been in for 3 minutes, and I'm going to show you just how quickly this works. Be careful not to burn yourself. Looks like this. It's sizzling, and well, you can see the crust is just filled with air. Going to add a bit of olive oil. And let's see how the crust looks. It's almost too hot to cut, but it's filled with air. Hopefully you can see it. Let's try it out. Super thin crust. Very nice bake on the bottom. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you will try out this recipe at home. If you do, feel free to tag us on Instagram. I'll just post it right below here. If you have any questions, you can ask them below the video here. If you have any ideas for compliments to put on top of your pizza, or any type of video you would like to see us make, please comment below as well. And always like and subscribe to help us out. Just going to load some more pizza, and then I'll see you again next time.